Hey everybody, my name is Wendy and I'm from Quilt 101 and I want to share something with you that we are doing. So Moda is putting on this block of the month. It's called My Favorite Color is Moda, and they are spotlighting their Bella solids, which we love. So we're going to follow along with Bella. Now Quilt 101 offers it in 3 colorways. We are doing the Primrose Garden, the Coastal Cool, and the Cookie Tin. And this is the pattern booklet that you're going to get with it. And this is going to be the quilt, depending on what colorway you are working with. Same pattern though. So here at Quilt 101, we specialize in pre-cut kits. So we have to stick to it with this one. So from us, you will get every month a packet of the corresponding blocks that Moda is doing. So this month happens to be 1 block, but it's 36 inches finished big. It's a big block. And this is the kit that you get from us for block 1. So it's all pre-cut, ready to go. Now, a lot of you are new to quilting or don't have that much experience. So we are going to be doing tutorials with every block of the quilt to help you along the way. So make sure you follow us and check back every month when you go to put your block together. And we're going to have fun just kind of sewing along with you guys. Part of the kit is this pattern booklet from Moda. And in the beginning, it has all the colorway numbers, the directions on, cutting the fabric, a fun little diagram you can color in if you like to do that. But like I said, our kits are pre-cut, so we're not going to get into the cutting part of it. We're just going to get into the piecing the block. So this is block 1 right here, and it's a big one. It's 36 finished block size, so it's a big one, and it'll be lots of fun to put together. Now, the first step of what you want to do, of course, is to take all of your pieces out. Now, these are all labeled. So we've got fabric 1, 3. So the first thing would be is to just separate those. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So the first step is lay out all of your fabric by fabric numbers. So this is the Primrose Garden colorway. Now, if you happen to have one of the other colorways, it's really important that you pay attention to the fabric numbers, because it could throw you off a little bit when you look at this picture. But if it's separated like this, I think you will be just fine. And then open your book up to block 1. For those who are a little bit newer to quilting, you might be like, what am I supposed to do? Because that's all you get. There's not a lot of instructions. There is a page earlier in the booklet that shows you how to make half square triangles. But what you need to know that if it's calling for 4 of fabrics 1 and 5, which happens to be this unit right here. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4 is where they come up with that number. As far as the big fabrics of square, I'm tongue-tied. The bigger squares, you only need half that amount. So if it makes sense to make 4 of these, you only need 2 big squares of green and 2 big squares of fabric 5, which is the white. So pull out 2 green and 2 white, and I'm going to show you how to make a half square triangle. So the first step in a half square triangle is you want to draw a diagonal line from corner to corner. You can just use a smaller ruler or even a larger ruler. You mark it diagonally, and then you rub your, this is a friction pen. They erase with heat. A light pencil would work because you won't see this, or some kind of an approved fabric pen or pencil. And then I like these things because my little arthritic hands, but you could put a pin kind of on each corner just to hold that in place. Now the directions in the book tell you to use a scant 1/4 inch throughout the entire quilt. And let me show you what I mean by a scant 1/4 inch. Now, when I mention a scant 1/4 inch, if you don't know what that means, and they want you to use a scant 1/4 inch through this whole quilt. It says it somewhere in that pattern booklet. So this is the drawn line right here. Now, I don't normally draw the 1/4 inch line, but I did it so you could understand. So this would be the true 1/4 inch seam on this drawn pen line. But a scant means that you go about one thread width closer to the drawn line. So it's not a true 1/4 inch. If you can see just a little bit in, if you hit your machine little button, it moves the needle one closer to this. If you're wondering about that scant 1/4 inch, let me explain once more. So this happens to be a 1/4 inch quilting foot that I love and would recommend to anybody who doesn't have one. It just means that from the middle of that little opening right there to this is exactly a 1/4 inch. So it just makes it easier to keep a consistent 1/4 inch seam. So on this, if you watch the needle, so right now it goes, well, let me move it back over. Good. This would be the true 1/4 inch right there. But on your machine, you want to move it one in. See that little jump? Do it once more. That gives you the scant 1/4 inch right there, and that's what you want. So as you sew, and you'll see the 1/4 inch foot's nice because you just use that right along that drawn line. That will keep a scant 1/4 inch for you. Once you've sewn your scant 1/4 inches, you're just going to come along and cut right on that drawn line, and then go to the ironing board and press your seams open. Now, pressing seams open with a scant 1/4 inch can be a little tricky on the fingertips, so be careful. But you're just going to just press the seam, and then you're going to open this up. And you just kind of press as you go, like this. You don't want to like iron it back and forth too much because it is cut on the bias right here and it could stretch. So that's what it looks like to press your seam open. Now that you've got your squares ironed, it's time to square them up. Now you can either use, like this one is an actual 6.5 inch ruler square that you can use, or you can use one that's a little bit bigger like this, and I will show you both ways so you know. So first let's do the 6.5 inch ruler. Now all the rulers have these little diagonal lines. Make sure that diagonal line goes right along the seam. And then you also want to make sure that there's a little bit of fabric hanging over on all of the edges, which there is on this one. So we are just going to come along here and trim off that extra fabric. Okay, so there's the first block. Now let me show you it using this kind of a ruler. So the 6.5 on this ruler is right here. So you want to make sure you follow those marks on your ruler. And again, you've got your diagonal line. Make sure that goes right along that seam. And let me bring you in a little bit closer so I can show you what I'm talking about. All right, so this, where are we? This is the 6.5 inch mark. and this is the 6.5 inch mark. So when you line these up, first of all, make sure that line runs right along the seam, and you want to make sure a little bit is hanging over so you can trim it to make it nice and squared. So that's pretty close there. And then at the 6.5, see how there's a little bit of fabric hanging over that mark? That's what you want. And down here, there's just that little bit hanging over the 6.5 inches. Now this is why you sew a scant 1/4 inch, because you want as much space as you can to do this right here. So I trimmed this. Now I'm simply going to turn my ruler and we're going to line it up. So let me line it up. Okay, so you still have the diagonal on the seam. And then this lines up right at the 6.5 inches. Oh, that is not 6.5 inches. Hold on a minute. There we go. That's better. Okay, so see how we've got the 6.5 inch right on the edge that we just cut. Now I'm going to go along here and trim this off right here. So those are the two different ways of trimming. Okay, I was just going to share one more tip with you. On the squaring up your half square triangles, if you're finding that they are super tight and sometimes maybe you don't have enough room to actually trim it down so it's a little bit wonky, what you can do is, when we talked about sewing that scant 1/4 inch, how you bump the needle in one, bump it once more to make it even more scanter. That's not a word, I know it, I just made it up, but you know what I mean. And that'll help give you a little extra space that you might need. Okay, now we're ready to sew the unit together. When you look at your pattern, you'll notice that each section is sewn separately first. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 units. And we're doing this one right here. So lay out your block according to the diagram. And then we're simply going to bring these together and bring this together, and you're going to sew a scant 1/4 inch. Remember, all the seams in this quilt are a scant 1/4 inch unless they tell you otherwise. And you're going to sew along here and here. Now you want to make sure that these seams line up really well, so you know, kind of put those together and pin this block so it stays together great. Here's another little tip at the sewing machine. If you start at this end, sometimes the machine will kind of eat the fabric a little bit. If that's the case, just come to the other end and start sewing on this end first where you do not have the bulk. Okay, so now that you have the two little sections here, you're going to flip them right sides together and you're going to sew along here. Just make sure that you match up these center seams perfectly here. So definitely match that up, pin it, and then pin the rest of it and sew your scant 1/4 inch and then press your seams open. Yes, the first unit is done. This is the back if you need to kind of know what the pressing looks like. And then here's the front. Now you guys are just going to keep continuing. So you've already done this one right here. Now you're on to the next. Now just remember, so you need 8 half square triangles of fabrics 1 in 10. And what that means is this 8 literally you kind of cut in half. So you need 4 fabric 1 squares and you need 4 fabric 10 squares. And once you sew those and cut them up, it's going to make 8 half square triangles. So I hope that makes sense. So on this one, you would need 4 fabric 2s and 4 fabric 7s. This one, you need 2 of each, 2 fabric 2s and 2 fabric 8s. So now you're at the point where everything has been sewn together, all of the half square triangles. They've been sewn, they've been cut, they've been trimmed to 6.5, and now you're ready to lay it out. You've got your What fabric is that? Fabric 3. Whoop, 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 I'm spilling it. Fabric 3 are the cornerstones. And then you've got to follow your diagram in the pattern. And how they have you doing this is in sections. So each of these you're going to sew together. So looking at this quilt, these will get sewn together. These. Then you just continue. We've already sewn this one. That one, this one, and this one. And then after you sew those together, then you're going to sew each row. And then once each row is sewn together, then you're going to combine the rows this way. If you're wondering how to sew each section together, you want to keep these specifically where it creates this point right here. You want to sew these two together. So you would, throw put these right sides together. Oh, this is hard one-handed. And you would want to sew these together, right, along here. Make sure you match up these seams on the point when you sew that you want to be able to keep that good point on it. And then after these are sewn together, then you would sew this one to this one. On these ones here, it doesn't matter, I don't think, because you're not really creating this point like you are there. So, you could sew these two together, and then sew, this row to this row. So that's kind of how you sew those sections together. I've got these two sewn together. Now, just a reminder to press your seams open like the pattern calls for. And also, once these two are sewn together, then you're simply just going to, flip these right sides together. Make sure that you line up these matching seams right here. I usually have a few clips on the ironing board, and I'll just go and clip them. And then you sew your scant 1/4 inch there, and that little section is done. So just keep continuing that way. Okay, this block is almost done. This is so fun. So when you sew each section, you are then going to sew it to the row. Now you got to make sure that you line up all the seams. Now I have already sewn this section together. So as you sew, you need to be really cautious and aware of matching all the seams. So this is connecting the rows, and this is connecting them in each section. So pin real well where those seams come together, and it's almost done. Yay! All right, guys, this is the finished quilt block. Look how big that is. Isn't that going to be fun? So this is block 1. Next month we're going to do block 2 and 3. They're a little bit smaller.